I was up in the Lake District last week for a few days holiday, and my friend Steve from university came and joined me in the Lake District to go and walk on a mountain. And we set off that morning, but we were typical blokes. You know, typical blokes can't multitask. Do you know that, ladies? We can't talk and do anything else at the same time. So as we talked and walked out of the holiday cottage where we were staying, both of us completely forgot the rucksack with everything in it. Everything. It had our mountain clothes, it had the map, our mobile phone, our food, everything. And an hour later we arrived at the foot of the mountain, looked to the back seat for the rucksack, and it wasn't there. And so being both men who can't multitask and men who are stubborn, we decided we'd do it anyway. But the clouds were down, you know. It was one of those days, as the picture on the screen behind me illustrates, it's one of those days where you'd say that you were feeling under the weather, you know. Kind of a threatening, dark, cloudy sort of day. But we set off anyway, wearing jeans and trainers, and I took some dog food with me, just in case. And just some biscuits, you know, just in case. I thought I'll stuff them in my pocket. If the worst comes to the worst, I'll give them to Steve. Anyway, as we went up this mountain, it was just cloudy and cold and wet. And about half an hour in, we just sort of paused and just thought, this is crazy. We're not going to make it. We're not getting anywhere. And we stopped, and we were just quite discouraged, quite depressed, quite downhearted as we paused there, feeling under the weather, feeling under the clouds, feeling pretty disappointed, discouraged. A little bit like if you went on a hot day to Roskilly's ice cream, you know, and they just sold the last ice cream. It was that kind of feeling. Or if you went to Philps for a pasty on a cold day and they just sold the last pasty, you know, gutting. Especially if they just sold it to an Emmet, you know. On Easter Saturday, the followers of Jesus were feeling pretty similar. Picture us kind of head in hands thinking this is hopeless and pointless. That's what they were thinking. They'd put all their Easter eggs, if you like, into one basket, and he had been crucified on a cross. For them it was finished, it was over, it was dark, it was depressing. Two of them had decided to quit and go home. They were on the way home. The others were in a locked room upstairs, just frightened, guilty, ashamed, hiding away. One of them had even committed suicide. It was just a dark, black scene of no hope. And it could be today that there's just one or two people here, and that's where you're at. For you it's Easter, but inwardly at least it's not happy Easter. You may be able to put on a brave face, but there's problems that you're facing, guilt that you're feeling, fears that you are experiencing that actually leave you also feeling that there's no way forward and there's very little hope. Well, picture us on that mountain. And as we sat there, discouraged, a man emerged from the mist, coming down the other way. And he emerged a bit like a yeti out of the mist, and we realised he was human, and he'd been further up than us, and he saw that we were discouraged, and he came over to us, and he tried to cheer us up, and he said, keep going, he said. And then he said this, he said, keep going, he said, it's beautiful up there. It's beautiful up there. What? We sort of said to each other, what do you mean? And he said, oh yeah, he said, give it another half an hour and you'll come out of the clouds. And it is glorious sunshine, the most crisp and fresh view. And we didn't know what to think, you know. Do you believe him? Because in the cloud, it doesn't feel like it's glorious up there. In the cloud, it's hard to believe in what you've not seen and experienced for yourself, isn't it? It's hard to take somebody else's word for it. Steve and myself, we did geography together. We'd heard of this thing called a temperature inversion, where it's cloudy in the valley and sunny on the tops, but we'd never experienced it, and it's hard to believe what you've not seen. I sound a little bit like Thomas from the Easter story. He said that. He said, until I see, I won't believe. Well, anyway, we had a choice to make. And I'll tell you what swung it for us. We decided to carry on for this reason. That we saw something in that man that had come down from higher up. We saw something that was compelling. A couple of things really. One, he was wearing a t-shirt. That was a little clue that it was warmer up there than it was down here. And there was something about his face, you know. He looked like a man who'd been in the sun. He was kind of glowing and happy. And it swung it for us, and we pressed on. And I'd ask you this morning, what are you going to do in response to what you've experienced? you've got choices. You could just turn back and turn away, forget that it ever happened, pretend that it's not true, say if I don't see it, I'm not going to believe it for myself. But I just wonder whether some of us this morning have seen something in the faces of those getting baptized, have heard something in the words of the songs and the testimonies and this talk that is compelling. And it speaks of the fact that the Son has risen, Jesus Christ. You know, we did decide to press on, and that is what we saw from the top. And as we sat on the top of the mountain, looking down on an ocean of cloud, basking in the sun, we were very pleased that we decided to believe and move forwards. And this morning I urge you, if you've heard something in this place that's compelling, if you've seen something in the faces that's glowing, if you've heard of a risen Jesus who transforms people's lives today, I urge you not to turn back, but to keep going. And it may be that for you, it's about having a coffee with someone that you know is a Christian and saying, tell me, what is this all about? Tell me about Jesus. Maybe it's coming next Sunday and listening to the historical evidence and the contemporary evidence for why we believe Jesus is physically alive and well and changing people's lives. I urge you, for the sake of the view, keep moving forwards with Jesus Christ. If you're living under a cloud, we say that, don't we? I'm feeling a bit under the weather. That can be true physically. It can be also true spiritually. Maybe you're under a cloud of debt. Maybe financial debt. Maybe you're feeling a slave to that. Maybe it's spiritual debt. Maybe you're feeling guilty and ashamed and regretful. You notice in those testimonies, many of them mentioned this issue of forgiveness and the joy of being forgiven. Listen, we are in debt to God, naturally speaking, but He sent His Son, Jesus Christ, to die for our sin, that the debt might be cancelled, that we might be forgiven. That's why the faces are glowing. That's why it changes people's lives, to know that our past will not count against our future. That's the joy that Jesus brings. It may be that you feel in debt. It may be that you're suffering a form of depression. And maybe that depression is related to the fact that you just feel life has no purpose or point or worth beyond just the run-of-the-mill stuff. Maybe you feel almost to the point that life's not worth living. See, ultimately, our sin, the things that we've screwed up, are like a cloud that separate us from God. And it's only as we recognise that Jesus Christ, the Son of God, has risen from the dead, that He is able to burn away that cloud and bring us into a relationship with God. And it was for that we were made. Anything else will feel empty and fall short. And St. Augustine famously said, "You made us for yourself, O God, and our hearts will always be restless until they find their rest in Thee." Have you got a restless heart? Jesus Christ has come to bring us to God. Maybe it's debt, maybe it's depression, and maybe it's death. Jesus also brings hope in the face of death. And death is something that we will face. Death is something that it causes a lot of fear of sickness, a lot of fear of dying, and struggling to understand the experience of losing loved ones. And maybe you're in that place. Maybe that's your experience. Listen, Easter is resurrection. It's Jesus dying our death, paying for our sin, and then rising again to prove His victory. This stuff is too big, too important, too significant to turn down. So I kind of picture myself this morning, I kind of picture these guys sharing testimony, like that man who came back down the mountain. The people who were discouraged, thinking of just giving up and turning back, and say, keep going. It's beautiful up there. And I urge you today, keep going. Put your faith in Jesus. Explore the Christian faith. It's beautiful up there. You might feel under-equipped, just as we were. You might feel like you don't know enough, you've not experienced enough. But here's the good news. It's not what you know, but who you know. It's not what you know. It's possible to know a lot of religion, it's possible to know a lot of rituals, but not know Jesus Christ. It's not what you know, but who you know. Do you know Jesus and the life-transforming difference that He makes? The Son has risen. Don't live under the clouds.